Last year, everything went completely downhill for the Dallas Mavericks after they gave up defense for offense when they acquired Kyrie Irving to give Luka Doncic a co-star. This year, it's a much different story. The Mavericks had the 4th best record after the All-Star break, going from the 7th seed to the 5th seed during that span, and became the first team since the 2010 Lakers to beat 3 50-win teams on their way to the NBA Finals. The Mavericks have done a much better job this year than last year with surrounding their stars with better complementary players, and a lot of credit should go to Nico for that, a guy who was heavily criticized just a year ago. There's also Luka Doncic having a career year as he led the league in scoring and finished 3rd in MVP voting. The Mavericks turnaround starts in the defensive end. The Mavericks were just 24th in defense last year and 16th this year. Since the All-Star break, though, they are 11th in defense and 2nd with Daniel Gafford in the lineup after acquiring him and PJ Washington at the trade deadline. Gafford's a far better rim protector than anyone the Mavs had last year. The acquisition of PJ Washington has also propelled their turnaround, as his 7'2" wingspan has been a huge asset for the Mavericks defense. I don't think most people could have expected PJ Washington to be this much of an asset for the Mavericks defense, since he was in Charlotte before he came to the Mavericks, so people weren't really paying attention to him. Even the 2 stars on the team who've been known for their offense and not their defense have had career years on the defensive end this year. Last year, the Mavericks paid a big price for not extending Jalen Brunson, who played a big part in the Mavericks going to the conference finals 2 seasons ago when Brunson was eligible for the extension, and we saw him become the face of the franchise for the Knicks. The Mavs hurt themselves even more by trading defense for offense when they brought in Kyrie Irving, who cost them both Dorian Finney-Smith and more money than Brunson. This year is a much different story. The Mavericks were just the 7th seed at the All-Star break. Kyle Kuzma even refused to get traded to the Mavericks because he didn't see them as a real contender. That sure aged terribly. Although the Mavericks turnaround really started at the trade deadline, and Nico has done a masterful job constructing this roster. One of their biggest assets on defense that was not on the team last year is their rookie Derrick Lively, who the Mavericks traded Cason Wallace for after drafting him 10th overall, and that trade has been a win-win for both teams. The Mavericks tanked at the end of last year to get that lottery pick, and while I'm usually very against tanking, I can't argue with the results here. Lively was 6th in Rookie of the Year voting this year, and in the playoffs, he has led the Mavs in field goal percentage while not missing a single shot in the conference finals, and has also led the team in plus minus. He has the highest plus minus by a rookie in the playoffs since Manu Ginobili in 2003, and his 16 made shots without a miss in the conference finals are the most in a playoff series in NBA history. Even for a rookie, Lively is one of the best communicators on defense, a skill that may not show up in the box score but is absolutely essential if you ever want to win anything in basketball.
Drop back! Drop back!
The guy who's been a huge part of Lively's development, you may remember him as the defensive anchor of the 2011 Mavericks championship team, Tyson Chandler. What they share in common is neither of them are go-to guys on offense, but are threats in the pick and roll as lob threats with their 7-foot frames, while defense is where they really stand out. Chandler has said of Lively that he has a willingness to actually learn, listen, and take in information. He has a great spirit. He reminds me a lot of myself. I feel the duty to actually be there for him and guide him as much as necessary, whatever I can do.
How much has he helped you in your first playoff series?
Words can't even describe how much it's helped me. Being able to know that I gotta focus on the court whenever there's so much things going on off the court. That's kind of the hardest part. I love playing basketball each day, but it's hard to wake up whenever there's a lot of things going on in the off-court life. But he's been able to help me keep my hand on my 2 shoulders, help me stay focused, and he's just someone I can go and talk to no matter what the situation is. And he's definitely been humongous help.
The Mavericks also signed Derrick Jones Jr. in free agency during the offseason, and he never amounted to much more than a journeyman playing for 4 teams in 7 seasons before joining the Mavericks. He happened to have a career year for the Mavericks, still as a role player, but good enough to start 66 out of 77 regular season games and every single playoff game. He shot decent from 3 during the regular season, but has been a sharpshooter in the playoffs, making close to 40% of his threes while being the primary defender of the best player in every series of this postseason and covering a ton of ground with his elite athleticism. The Mavs really moved the needle when they acquired Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington on February 8th. They are 20-7 with Gafford and 21-8 with Washington. They may only be role players, but Gafford is the rim protector along with Lively that the Mavericks were severely missing last year, and Washington is filling in the void that they left by trading Dorian Finney-Smith for Kyrie. Washington's 6'7" frame and 7'2.5" wingspan allows him to guard both the perimeter and the post effectively. We even saw PJ Washington effectively guard Victor Wembanyama back in March, and in the second round series against OKC, he even had some moments of doing a really nice job guarding SGA. His defense on SGA is something you wouldn't know about just from looking at the box score, and this is why watching games is important. As Yogi Berra once said, you can observe a lot just from watching. Offensively, Washington is a streaky shooter, but when he's on, he can really light it up, and he's really good in the dunker spot. Washington even really stepped it up in the second round of the playoffs, averaging 17 points per game, while Luka and Kyrie were unable to play up to their standards. Last year, the Mavs had Maxi Kleber, 35-year-old JaVale McGee, Dwight Powell, and 6'8" Christian Wood as their rim protectors, and that didn't go well. Powell has pretty much only played in garbage time in the playoffs this year with Gafford and Lively's presence, and it's for the better. Kleber is the best option out of the four guys the Mavs had last year and has had his moments this year when healthy because he's versatile, but he's been injured this year. He hasn't played as much this year either, and even when Kleber is healthy, he's still not as mobile as Gafford or Lively, nor does he have Lively's size, so Gafford and Lively are definitely upgrades. Gafford is the same height as Kleber at 6'10", but he's only 25, 7 years younger than both Kleber and Powell, and way more athletic than both of them. On offense, Gafford proved to be effective 3 seasons ago while playing alongside Russell Westbrook, which can easily be forgotten about, and now he has great chemistry with Luka Doncic as a pick and roll partner. The Mavs had a plus 9.7 net rating with Doncic and Gafford on the floor together during the regular season. Gafford even came 2 baskets short of tying Wilt Chamberlain's record of 35 consecutive makes. Ever since Luka came into the league, the Mavericks have been among the league's worst in points in the paint. With Gafford, though, they've averaged the 7th most points in the paint. One more thing that their new acquisitions brought is depth. The Timberwolves got to exploit the Nuggets' lack of depth in their front court. While Nikola Jokic just won his 3rd league MVP, they don't have any other centers outside of him. DeAndre Jordan at this point in his career isn't playable anymore, and all the Nuggets had left to play at center to give Jokic any rest is Aaron Gordon, who's really a stretch 4. The Mavericks have Gafford and Lively. Lively started 42 out of 55 regular season games this year, but hasn't started 1 game in the playoffs. The Nuggets' lack of depth is something the Timberwolves were able to exploit in the second round, but there was no lack of depth to exploit against the Mavericks. The Mavericks have the ability to go 9 deep in their rotation. The Nuggets don't. Luka and Kyrie have always been known for their elite offense, but never for their defense. They've certainly stepped it up a lot on that end. I also think Kyrie, as one of the most outspoken athletes in recent memory, has shown a lot of maturation while with the Mavericks. While nobody could ever question his ability to score, his ability to lead has always been what everyone, including myself, has always questioned, and he's found a way to create drama one way or another on many occasions before arriving in Dallas. He's been pretty drama-free these days. After the Mavericks lost Game 4 to the Clippers in a game where he looked unguardable, and while Luka was the one having an off night, Kyrie still took blame when talking to the media. That's when I thought Kyrie's leadership could no longer be seen as questionable. As far as fitting with Luka's ball-dominant style, even though it's well known that Kyrie can handle the ball like he has it on a string, he has played alongside LeBron in Cleveland for 3 years, and then 37 games with James Harden in Brooklyn, so playing off the ball isn't new to him. He's very capable of doing it. Kyrie has also been selfless enough to have no problem with this team being Luka's team when he's older than Luka. Kyrie is also able to bring championship experience to the Mavericks. It was being mentioned in the broadcast of Game 5 of the conference finals that Kyrie wanted to be an extension of a coach when he came to Dallas, and he wanted to help his team be more mature and prepare for the big moments, which it seems like he's done a way better job than anyone could have imagined. What else should be looked at for how the Mavericks only ended as the 5th seed? Kyrie missed 24 games. The Mavs were 39-19 with him and 11-13 without him. The Mavs also rested Luka and Kyrie in the last 2 games of the season, which, had they not done, they could have had home court advantage in the first round against the Clippers, but we can't argue with the results. After winning the scoring title and finishing top 3 in MVP voting for the regular season, Luka has led the NBA playoffs in almost every cumulative stat we can think of. He is proof that you don't need to be the most gifted athlete to dominate in basketball, since Luka is far from the best athlete. Luka has also proven he is incredibly tough during these playoffs, not missing a single game after spraining his knee in Game 3 of the first round against the Clippers. He still played great against the Clippers in Games 5 and 6. Against OKC, it was good enough to win, and he played great in Games 5 and 6 to close them out. We saw both of his knees bleeding through his leggings during the conference finals, and he still had just 1 game out of 5 where he scored less than 30 points. Luka even proved during the conference finals that Jaden McDaniels, who made the all-defensive second team this year, isn't strong enough to guard him. One more thing Luka has done besides scoring in bunches and making plays for others, he led the Mavericks in rebounding throughout this playoff run and has even out-rebounded the bigs on both the Thunder and Timberwolves. You know what the great Pat Riley once said, no rebounds, no rings. One more thing worth noting, he had 5 steals in Game 3 of the conference finals. Every championship team needs a closer, and the Mavericks have 2 elite closers in Luka and Kyrie. Both of them, being the great closers that they are, have the Mavericks at 5-3 in games decided by 5 points or less in these playoffs, and 2 of those wins that were within 5 points or less came in the conference finals. Jason Kidd also deserves a lot of praise for how he's coached this team. Last year, he was heavily criticized by many, including myself. His first year with the Mavs, I thought he did a great job, but not last year. Oftentimes, I think coaches can be blamed way too quickly. I've been guilty of this before too. Oftentimes, what's actually needed is the right personnel. Kidd had to completely change his starting lineup outside of his 2 stars so drastically mid-season, and it certainly isn't easy to develop such great chemistry this quickly. The fact that the Mavericks did is something I think Kidd deserves a lot of praise for. Another thing talked about in the broadcast of Game 4 and also at the end of Game 5 of the conference finals that is attributed to how Kidd has found the success that he's had in Dallas this year is how he's handled his 2 stars. Instead of telling them what to do, he's been telling them what he would do as the great point guard he once was in his playing days, and both of his stars have responded well to that. On the defensive end, Kidd made 9 all-defensive teams during his Hall of Fame playing career, so defense is something he definitely knows plenty about and can use to his advantage as a coach these days. The Mavericks are great at communicating on defense, and that's something every well-coached team should have as a strength. The problem with the Mavericks defense last year was not having the right personnel, which a coach can't do anything about. Now he has big men who are not only great at protecting the rim, but he's also comfortable with having them switch out onto the perimeter because of how mobile they are. And they don't get cooked when Kidd does this. Just one thing, please, if you're already blowing out the other team with 7 minutes left in the game, you don't need to have Luka in the game. Other than that though, great job, Coach Kidd. Do you think the Mavericks will win their 2nd championship in franchise history? As a Lakers fan, I really hope they do so we don't see the Celtics raise banner number 18 before the Lakers do. Please, Mavericks, let's not allow the Celtics to make it happen. Go Mavericks! If the Mavs win the finals, they'll be the lowest seeded team to win the championship since the 1995 Rockets, and also the first team that didn't have home court advantage in the first round to ever win a championship that is not a defending champion. That's all for this video. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be really appreciated, and if you can please consider subscribing and turning on notifications, your support is much appreciated. If you're already subscribed, thanks so much for your support as always. Links to my social media are down below if you want to see my more immediate reactions of what's going on in the sports world. If you'd like to see my most recent video or the one that YouTube recommends, both are up above. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Go Mavericks!